Hello and welcome to Team Franco Bodybuilding Podcast. This is episode number 29. I apologize for the delay because I was on a weekly basis of putting these out, but the opportunity never really existed as far as having a somewhat quiet household, so you don't hear my dogs barking or kids going up and down the steps. But I have the time now, and tonight I would like to discuss posing and why posing is so important. So, what I'm going to do is basically give you the lowdown on how I teach a class. As you may or may not know, I have monthly posing classes. I've been doing so for almost 15 years, and it's been a great asset as far as helping those who have never posed in their life, those who want to learn about it, to those who are professionals and just need to brush up or build up the conditioning. Spoiler alert. So I figured I will talk about what I talk about when I have my monthly classes, because typically I give an intro, talk for about 5 minutes, take questions, talk a little bit more. So it's not all posing, but I like to also express what the day's going to be about, as far as lining up and the little details with that, because again there's a lot of first timers. So I thought this format would be good for those who cannot make it or cannot make the drive if you live across the country or what have you. I've never taken the opportunity to record it, only because you talk, you don't talk, you instruct, so it won't be that clean. So here I am, gonna go over basically what I like to discuss when I teach a class. And as you know, with all these podcasts, they're not scripted. I get a thought in my head and I roll with it, and sometimes I forget things, or sometimes I go on a ramble. But this one should be good because I've done this plenty of times. So when people enter my class, I like to learn what division they're doing. Like to learn if they ever competed before, so I know who I'm dealing with as far as what they need to do. Sometimes I have people who are pros and they're just there for more experience in building up that stamina, like I may have mentioned. Typically, I'll say posing has three main factors that you need to focus on. First and foremost is to learn how to pose for your physique and no one else's. Because you will see people that will practice because they watch YouTube videos of professionals or some other people. That's good to get an idea, but that type of instruction via just watching someone else and what they're doing is not going to be applied to your physique, because we're all different. We all have different body structures. I always say we have different fingerprints. So if someone's holding their hands a certain way, that may not look good on you, but may look good on them. Everyone has different shoulder widths as far as, to their waist ratio. So it's going to look differently. If someone bends their knees, it may not look good on you because of, your legs, your lower body's just longer, whatever. So that is the one thing that you need to do, and why the classes are important, so we can see you in person. So therefore, seeing you in person can really put you in the right place for that particular pose that you're doing. And let me just say that I'm not going to talk about specifically bikini, figure, men's physique, classic physique, whatever, bodybuilding, because what I'm going to continue to discuss is general posing, and you can apply it for your division. So it's learning how to pose. That's the first and foremost thing that you got to do. And a common question that I get is that, all right, I learned how. When should I start? I like to give a roundabout number of 3 months. Okay, that should give you plenty of time. Once you learn the craft of posing for your division, you're comfortable. 3 months out from your competition is typically when I would suggest, and what I suggest to clients. As far as duration and frequency, 3 times a week, I think is plenty, or you can do every other day. 5 to 10 minutes is plenty, because the old adage of like the bodybuilders, oh, the more you pose, the more grainier your muscles will be. No, that's bullshit. It can be a workout. You're going to be burning a few calories, but as far as the isometric contraction, it's not going to have that much effect. Obviously, you're going to have more muscle control, but I'm not, and I would never tell anyone you have to spend 30 minutes every day posing. Find something else to do more productive with your life. So, again, going back, learn how to pose, start practicing about 3 months out once you are doing it correctly, and hopefully you are. So that goes to the next point and to the lead in that I was talking about, the duration. You want to learn how to pose, then you want to build the stamina up. That is super important, and that's what separates people from winning and losing sometimes, because they may know how to pose properly, but if they don't have the stamina or the conditioning to hold the pose, they're going to fade out on stage. So I'm going to give you a lot of examples at the end of bad posing and what I see through experiences. So just hold on tight for that. So stamina. What do I mean by stamina and conditioning? Just for example, you learn how to pose, you don't practice. You come to one class, you nail it, but you don't practice enough to build up that conditioning. You go on stage for that first time, obviously your nerves are high, hopefully you're not depleted, your anxiety levels can be increased, and you're on stage. Well, how long are you going to be on stage? I'm going to talk about that in a minute. You hold the pose, and then you do a couple, rotations, and then you're on there, and then you change places, and then you switch places again, and then you hit it again. Well, if you don't have that conditioning, you're going to fade. Typically, when you start fading is that when you start seeing funkiness of the arms moving, the shoulders moving, mentally thinking that you're overcompensating because you're fading out. And as a judge and a promoter, I see this often, because typically first-time competitors compete the most. So I'll see people just fading out because they didn't put the time in, and it's quite evident. Obviously, if they don't know how to pose, they didn't put the time in, and they basically then didn't put the time in to build the stamina and the conditioning up. So that's why when you first start practicing, don't go all out. Even if you do a few minutes every other day for the first couple of weeks, then start building it up. So you could start with 3 minutes, build it up to 6, 9, 12. And if you're up to 12 minutes or even 15 minutes tops, you're going to hold it. So I'm talking about these times. How does that relate to posing? Again, a guideline for when you're actually on stage that I like to give: for every person that you're standing next to, you figure a minute. So if there are 5 people, figure 5 minutes, up or down. If there are 10 people, it could be 10 minutes. So that can decide on how long you're going to be on stage, but it's not a written rule, okay? Because, again, it depends on the quality of the class, dare I say. If you have, say, 5 guys in bodybuilding, one guy is head and shoulders above the rest, and a couple of them are average, and then the other couple are first timers, that could be easier to judge, only because it's not as tough class. You have the one guy, boom, he looks great, he's posing great. The other two, all right, we got to figure out who's going to be second and third, and then the other 2 guys, well, you can figure that out for fourth or fifth. So you're not going to be on stage as long. Now, if you take those same 5 guys in that class and they're equally great, like a couple times when I've judged the Yorton Cup, the top pro show, you're like, holy shit, this is hard, only because these 5 guys look amazing. So therefore, they're going to be worked even harder, and they're going to be put through their paces. So they're going to be on stage that much longer. I've seen classes of 5 be on stage for 10, 12 minutes. Now, here's a story, story time. The first pro show that I ever competed in was the Yorton Cup way back when in 2007. There was only one class of men bodybuilders, and I believe there was 15 of us. We were on stage, and it used to be a YouTube video for about 27 minutes, I believe. And it was like five guys up front posing. Brought those five guys back, another five guys posing. But while all those five guys are posing and being, judged, if you're standing in the back, you're still keeping your body tight. So I was up there for 27 minutes. And because I was not like considered in the top five or the bottom five, I basically was being judged with both of those groups. I remember there were pools of sweat, that we were standing on, and people were huffing and puffing, and I had practiced a lot. I would consider myself the average pro bodybuilder at that time, but I had a lot to prove because it was my first pro show, and I was out there with the top five guys, and then I was called back out with the bottom five guys, and it was just back and forth and back and forth, and that was like probably the hardest work, all 15 of us have done. So again, it goes to preparation, learning how to pose, and then building that stamina up. So that comes to another little story time when it comes to posing. Oh no, before I get to that one, let me discuss a couple more things. After the stamina up, okay, obviously when you learn how to pose and you have that conditioning, it's composure that is super important. And composure comes with confidence, and that's because you learned how to pose properly. Unfortunately, you'll see people that are super nervous, and that is because they did not prepare, or they're just higher anxiety type people, or on the flip side, they don't have the composure or confidence, but they are awfully cocky. They show themselves off in a way that, they're too cocky and they're drawing attention to themselves. I saw that many, many years ago where I was attending a show, and it was the two guys left for bodybuilding, and the one kid basically was smirking, pointing at the other guy. He was acting like a real asshole. That is cockiness, not confidence. That is basically trying to show someone up. So you want to have proper composure. So that's my third rule. Proper composure, professionalism also goes a real long way. Again, leading into my little story that I'll tell even in my class to set a bad example for me is that one of my pro shows, I was disappointed and I lost my composure when they were giving the awards. And when I got some pictures back, you can see it on my face. And I was like, oh man, that's terrible. It was embarrassing. At least for me, it was embarrassing because I wasn't pleased with my placement. I was still a little immature at the time, and I did not have that professional composure that I preach now and have ever since. So it was a bad look for me. So even if you are pushed to the side in some organizations, they'll keep the top three in the middle, unfortunately. You need to keep that composure at all times because that will lead to another story of mine. That, again, another pro show that I did, I was pushed to the side. There's about 8 or 9 guys of us in the lightweight pro division. And again, this was my second pro show, and I was like excited. I nailed my prep. Everything was great. And I was pushed to the side. And then I wasn't brought up that often. And I'm like, oh my God, I did all this work, and I was hardly looked at. Long story short, I ended up winning, my division because I spoke to one of the judges at the end. He's like, yeah, Joe, you look great. We had to focus on everyone else. So that was that. So you never know what the outcome's going to be on stage. So keeping composure, keeping that smile on your face, that relaxed look, and hopefully you're having the greatest time ever goes a long way. Not only because of your friends and your family watching, for those pictures that you may be spending. And the chances are, if you continue to compete, you might be in front of the same judges. So it's that impression that you're going to make. So if you look like you're having a good time, if you're in the middle, if you're on the end, or whatever, don't sweat it. Now, again, my judges, I, teach them, and they're smart enough. They mix everyone up. So you have no idea what's going on. It's because I encourage judges at my show, especially the head judge, to keep you on stage longer, to put you through the paces, because you are paying money, and to get your money's worth so you have a good time. So it's a great experience. And, I see that a lot. I'm standing on the side of the stage. So basically, when they're coming off, like, oh my God, that was the hardest thing ever, it was just so hard, and, oh, we had such a good time. And that's what it comes down to. So if you know how to post properly, it's going to be even a better time, and those pictures are going to come out great no matter what placement you have. It's just all about preparation. So that's why I do these classes, and that's why I'm doing this podcast talking about it. A few other questions that I get, besides how long am I going to be on stage, like I just quick review, it's figure a minute a person, also the level of quality or equalness of everyone, all the physiques will also determine. Some organizations, they rip you right through no matter what, they don't care. I think that's wrong, but some shows, be prepared for that to happen. It is a reality. So talking about the day itself, and not to get too nitty gritty, but these are things that I like to mention, especially since I have first timers in my shows. And if you're a first timer, it's going to benefit you. But pretend that there's a class already on stage and you are 3 or 4 classes deep from going on. So typically you will be hanging backstage. There should be an expediter, a person that's going to tell you when to get ready, when to get pumped up, when to put your glaze on if you haven't already. So you have plenty of time. So therefore, the next step is basically what we consider on deck. So after you get pumped up and you get ready, the expediter will put you in numerical order, and then you're going to be hanging out on the side of the stage, considered on deck, while the class in front of you is on stage, putting through their paces, being judged. As soon as they come off, you are then going to hear the head judge announce the class. So say he says, bikini novice short, please come to the stage. We have number 1, number 2, and you just follow the person in front of you. Typically, most stages will be marked, but no matter what, you just follow the person in front of you, and you stop, give yourself plenty of room. You don't have to worry too much where you're standing, because the head judge is then responsible for putting you in the best lighting. So he or she may tell you, everyone take a giant step to the left or the right, or step up, step back, or give yourself a little bit more room. So from your job now, when you step on stage, is to listen to the head judge and just listen to his commands as far as the poses go. If it's a large group, so if it's because most shows will have 7 judges, some will have 5, and they're centered in the middle so they can see everyone. If it's a large group and you're in a class of, say, 10 people, 10 bikini competitors, and you're competitor number 1 or competitor number 10, and you're on the ends, take the initiative and pose towards the middle, not towards your boyfriend or husband that's taking pictures, or your friend that's taking pictures directly in front of you. That doesn't count. You want to be pointing here. I'm moving my hands like you can see me. You want to be directing your poses towards the center of the judging table so they can see you clearly. Now, most judges will tell you, and they will express, bow yourself in, take a step forward so we can see you. But if they don't, you want to take that initiative, because I've seen, again, judging, and it's a big group, and they're just posing off to the side, and we tell them, no, you got to be looking towards us so we can see you. And typically, if you're on the end, and if you're not in the best lighting, be prepared to be moved around. Again, another show that I judge, I remember The head judge was awesome. It was at the Yorton Cup a few years ago, and the lighting on my side of the stage was really good, but on the other side of the judge, it was terrible. So he was just flipping people all around to the one side of the stage so we can see you. Unfortunately, that can happen. The stage lighting was messed up or it was set wrong, whatever. But a good judge will take control of the competition in the class that's in front of them. So, like I said, all you got to do at that time is just listen to the head judge and pose. A couple things that I've seen over the years and why it's so upsetting when you see someone that looks fantastic but don't have a clue what they're doing while they're on stage. One of my contests that I had, I was with my son, and the show had a TV screen, or the venue had a TV screen, so we're watching. And he's like, "Dad, what are they doing?" And he doesn't even know what the division is. He doesn't even know. I'm like, "I don't know." He says, "They don't look right. They're posing awkward." Even in my younger years of competing, when my parents always used to go, my dad would comment, my own father, and he really didn't have any clue. That goes to the most important thing that I'll tell anyone now when it comes to posing. Once you learn how to, the more relaxed that you pose, the better that you will look. People who are not prepared will overpose, they'll overtry, they'll overflex, they'll oversqueeze, they burn themselves out, and they just don't look comfortable on stage. You ever look at a professional, if natural or not, they're just falling into the poses. They just set themselves up. Less is more. And it's because their body is speaking for themselves, but their body is showing it off. And the pose is just, amplifying their physique. The pose does not make the physique makes the pose. So a common mistake that you will see in a lot of competitors, like figure, men's physique, even bodybuilding, is that their arms are too flared out to the sides. I always tell people that you don't want your hands to be further out than your elbows, or they'll have crazy angles at their elbows, or their arms are set up in front of them, looking like Frankenstein or holding a tray, or they'll raise their shoulders up, too high because they're trying to bring out their back or whatever, or their shoulders forward. What is common instruction that I give to all divisions? And even though, you can't see me doing it, you want to keep your shoulders still. If your shoulders move up and down, your arms and your back will follow. Same thing, if your arms come forward, they will follow. You basically want to be a swivel when you're doing any type of poses for figure, men's physique, bodybuilding, and keep your shoulders still. Thinking about just keeping them wide with a little bit of air in your chest, and your arm positioning will follow. That is the biggest thing that you'll see. You'll see that in figure, where they'll just raise their shoulders up so high, like I don't know what they're doing, or in men's physique, where they'll spread their arms out like they got, super lats. No, less is more when it comes to posing and flexing, and just let it fall naturally. Again, when you have beginners who may not have as much muscle or just didn't practice, they tend to overflex and do too much, or they squeeze too hard. Like you'll see men's bodybuilders when they're doing a front double bicep, they're squeezing their arms and they're bouncing their arms. No, your muscles are not going to grow all of a sudden. They're just going to shake and you're going to look silly. So you want to hit the pose, you want to tense up just enough, but not to the point that you feel like you're going to be shaking. And another tidbit when it comes to this, you want to pose hard enough, but you should be able to have a conversation with the person next to you. If you can't talk, I'm not saying that you would while you're on stage, but it's a good indicator. If you're squeezing so hard and you think you can't talk to someone, well, you're flexing too hard and you're gonna fade out and it's gonna be a mess. So shoulders are so important. That's the one tip that I can give you without seeing you actually pose. So once you learn how to pose, and again, this is information that I give and tips when you take my class. Once you learn how to pose and you want to practice at home, you do not want to practice with a mirror, because when you step on stage, that mirror is not going to be there to correct you. I learned that probably from the first time I competed when I was 19. I would pose, I would look at the mirror, I would correct, all right, do this, that. But then when I was on stage, I was like, oh shit, the mirror's not there. And I felt lost, like in space. So that's why practicing as much as you can without a mirror, you'll find your body, you'll find it, and it just becomes like training. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it, and you do not need that mirror. So if you don't have a mirror, which I'm not suggesting you to use, what I would suggest is to take your camera from your phone, videotape yourself, going through a few turns, if you're a bikini competitor, figure, or a few poses, and angle it up, because that's typically how the judges are going to view you. Hopefully, if you're in a good venue, a theater, judges are looking up. So you want to angle it up so you can see yourself from the perspective of the judges. That's how you practice. That's how you see what you're doing, see if it looks right, and so on and so forth. I think that's it. I'm talking for almost 30 minutes now. Hopefully you guys are listening the whole time. So a quick review. You want to learn how to pose properly for your physique and for your division, and not anyone else by watching videos. It can help, but in-person instruction from someone that knows what they're doing can be a super help. Build the stamina up. Give yourself enough time out from your show to build stamina, but I'm not telling you got to spend hours and hours a week. Learn how to have the proper composure on stage so you don't look like an idiot, especially if you don't place where you want to place, or if you don't get moved around, because everything has consequences. You may look great, place well, they push you out to the side, you don't know it, you look like all pissed off, and people see that, and it's not a good look, or vice versa, because people are going to see you over and over again, because this is a tight community. So that's the top 3 things. And then once you learn how to pose properly, practice without a mirror, use your video camera, whatever, from that angle up. That is super important. Again, less is more, and just let your body fall into it, because when you train, you get better. So the more times you squat, you get better. The more times you pose and pose properly, you're going to get better. So hopefully, guys, this has been helpful. If you are in the area, my posing classes are right in the heart of Bucks County. I have them once a month. I've had people come hours away. The classes are 2 hours long. I have my friend Bridget, who is a bikini pro, who handles all the bikini competitors. She also judges. And if you had any questions about bikini posing and you're close, reach out to me. I can get you in contact with her. Or if you want a one-on-one posing session, I'm always up for that, for helping. So I'm going to wrap this one up. Hopefully I hit everything. If you have any questions about coaching or diet or prep or lifestyle changes, you can check out my website, teamfrancobodybuilding.com. I can be reached at fitfranco@verizon.net. And I'll talk to you guys soon.